It was one of those golden summer mornings when everything felt calm and perfect, the kind of morning that made the world seem slow and kind, the sky stretching endlessly blue, and the sound of birds filling the soft air. The man stood in his driveway, a towel in hand, wiping down the shiny surface of his bright red Tesla. Sunlight reflected off the car's curves like liquid fire, and he smiled to himself, proud of what he had built. His home wasn't the biggest in the neighborhood, but it was clean, smart, and peaceful. He had worked hard for it. Years of saving, countless late nights, and a dream that finally sat gleaming in his driveway. Beside it, freshly installed, stood his new pride and joy, a sleek, black Tesla charging station powered directly by solar panels. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about independence, about having control over his own energy. But what he didn't know was that across the street, behind thin curtains and jealous eyes, someone else was watching with silent fury. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, stared through her window at his driveway, her jaw tight, her arms crossed. Her Lexus hybrid sat in her garage, spotless but old compared to his car. She hated that he had gotten approval to install solar panels before she did. She hated that his Tesla looked more expensive than her Lexus. But most of all, she hated that she had no power over him. The HOA had strict rules about changes in the neighborhood. Paint colors, fences, lawns. But the man had done everything legally, every form signed, every approval documented. She had tried to block him, but the city had overruled her. Now every time she saw those shining solar panels, she saw defeat. "Show off," she muttered under her breath, sipping her iced coffee and glaring at his house. The man, unaware of her growing envy, finished cleaning his Tesla and admired the charger one last time before heading inside. His kids were watching cartoons, his wife was baking cookies, and everything felt perfect. That evening, as the sun sank and the air cooled, he plugged in his Tesla for the night. The charger hummed softly, a steady green glow reflecting on the driveway. He stood there for a moment, enjoying the quiet hum of clean energy before heading to bed. But across the street, the quiet wasn't peace, it was plotting. Karen couldn't sleep. She paced her living room, muttering to herself about fairness and community balance. In her mind, she deserved access to that charger. After all, wasn't she part of the same neighborhood? Didn't the HOA maintain the street? Didn't that make everything, roads, sidewalks, utilities, shared property? Her logic was twisted but strong enough to make her believe she was right. By midnight, she made up her mind. She grabbed her keys, an old orange extension cord, and slipped out of her front door. The night was still, the moon casting long silver shadows across the street. She tiptoed across the road like a thief, the cord dragging behind her. The Tesla charger stood there quietly, its green light pulsing like a heartbeat. Karen crouched beside it, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. "Let's see if your fancy toy can share," she whispered. She plugged one end into her Lexus and the other into the Tesla charger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the charger beeped softly, and the Lexus dashboard lit up with the charging icon. "Ha!" she whispered proudly. "Works just fine. He won't even notice." She stood up, brushing dirt from her knees, already imagining telling everyone in the next HOA meeting how she tested his charger for safety. But her victory was short-lived. A strange sound broke the silence, a faint buzz that grew louder. The charger's light flickered from green to yellow, then to red. Karen frowned. "What's wrong with this thing?" she muttered, tapping the cord. Suddenly, sparks flew from the plug with a sharp crackle. She screamed, stumbling backward. The charger hissed and then shut down completely. Her Lexus headlights flashed, the alarm blaring to life, echoing through the sleeping neighborhood. Dogs started barking, lights flicked on in nearby houses, and panic filled the air. Karen scrambled to her feet, heart racing, her hair frizzed from the static. Smoke rose from the cord, and the smell of burnt plastic filled the night. Without thinking, she yanked the cable free, tossed it into her bushes, and ran home, her slippers slapping against the pavement. By the time she reached her door, the alarm stopped. She stood there, panting, looking across the street. The Tesla sat unharmed, glowing faintly under the porch light. The Charger was dark, dead silent. She cursed under her breath and slammed her door shut. Inside, she paced in circles, trying to calm down. "It's fine," she told herself. "It wasn't my fault." His stupid Charger shorted out. "He'll never know." But her voice trembled. She looked out the window again. No movement. Maybe she had gotten away with it. The next morning, the man woke early as always. The world outside was bright and fresh. He walked to his driveway, coffee in hand, expecting to see his Tesla fully charged and ready. But when he glanced at the Charger, he stopped. The lights were off. The surface was scratched. And on the ground, near the edge of the driveway, were small black burn marks and a piece of melted orange plastic. His brow furrowed. "What the?" he muttered, kneeling to examine it. The plug was partially fused to the Charger's port, and scorch marks streaked across the concrete. His Charger, his brand-new, state-of-the-art Charger, was ruined. He ran his hand along the edge, noticing fingerprints in the dust. "No," he whispered. "No way." His wife came out, concern on her face. "What happened?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "But someone touched it." She frowned. "Maybe kids." He shook his head. "No. This wasn't kids. Look." He pointed at the melted cord piece. "This is a heavy-duty extension cable. Whoever did this tried to steal power." "But who would?" she started, then stopped. They both turned their heads slowly toward the house across the street. The curtains in Karen's window fluttered slightly, as if someone had just stepped away from them. He didn't say a word. He walked inside, poured another cup of coffee, and sat down at his computer. He opened his security camera feed and rewound the footage to midnight. It was all there. The quiet street. The flicker of motion. And then, her. Clear as day, even in night vision. Karen sneaking across the road, dragging the orange cord, plugging into his Charger. His jaw clenched as he watched the sparks fly, her panicked scramble, her retreat. He replayed it twice to be sure. There was no doubt. It was her. His neighbor, the self-proclaimed rule enforcer, the woman who fined people for leaving their trash cans out too long, had broken into his driveway and stolen from him. He sat there for a long moment, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. His wife peeked over his shoulder and gasped softly. "You're going to show this to the HOA, right?" she asked. "Oh, I'll show them," he said, voice calm but sharp. "I'll show everyone." That afternoon, Karen tried to act normal. She watered her plants, waved at passing cars, and smiled as if nothing had happened. But she couldn't help glancing across the street. The man hadn't looked her way once. That made her nervous. When the HOA meeting rolled around that evening, she dressed up, determined to regain control. She arrived early, chatting loudly, pretending confidence. But when the man walked in with a quiet smile and a tablet in hand, her stomach dropped. He sat down, waited for the meeting to begin, and when her name came up on the agenda, he stood. "Before we discuss neighborhood maintenance," he said evenly, "I'd like to share a short clip from my security camera." The room fell silent. Karen's eyes widened as the video began playing on the big screen. The grainy footage showing her sneaking through the dark, plugging in the cable, the sparks, her panicked run. The gasps were instant. "Is that Karen?" someone whispered. The HOA president looked stunned. Karen shot to her feet, shouting, "That's fake. He edited that." But the laughter spreading around the room told her it was over. The man didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "That Charger runs on solar. You didn't steal from me. You tried to steal from the sun." The room erupted with laughter, and Karen stormed out, humiliated. But as she slammed the door behind her, one thought burned in her mind like fire. She wasn't finished yet. As the man packed up his tablet, a faint smile touched his lips. He had exposed her once, but he knew her type. She would come back. And next time, he'd be ready. Because sometimes, the only way to stop someone who thinks they can steal your power is to let them try again and watch them destroy themselves. And deep down, He already knew. That wasn't the end of the story. It was only the spark before the fire. The next morning came with a heavy silence that hung over the neighborhood like a warning, the kind that made even the birds quiet. The man stood in his driveway again, but this time not with pride or peace. His Charger still sat there, blackened on one side, a faint burn mark on the concrete like a scar on the heart of his home. He had already sent the video evidence to the HOA group chat before sunrise, and by now, every resident had seen it. Yet, across the street, Karen's house remained silent, her blinds tightly shut. But the real storm was coming that evening, the HOA monthly meeting. The man wasn't one for drama, but this time, he was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. He spent the afternoon re-watching the footage, cutting short clips for easy replay, labeling each timestamp clearly, and saving it all to his tablet. His wife asked if he was nervous. He smiled slightly, not nervous, just done being quiet. By the time evening came, the community center was full. The HOA meetings were usually dull, talk about trash pickup, gardening rules, and parking complaints, but not tonight. Tonight, everyone was whispering about one thing, the Tesla Charger incident. People shot glances toward Karen as she strutted in late, wearing oversized sunglasses and pretending not to notice the stairs. She sat near the front, crossing her legs and flipping through her notes with exaggerated importance. When the president called the meeting to order, her fake smile widened. "Let's begin with the safety discussion," she said sweetly, cutting off the president as if she still ran the show. "There's a serious issue we must address. A homeowner installed unsafe electrical equipment that caused damage to my vehicle." Murmurs rippled across the room. The president frowned. "Karen, that's not on the agenda." "It is now," she snapped, standing up dramatically. "My car was nearly destroyed because of negligence. And I demand compensation for the damages caused by his faulty charger." She pointed directly at the man, her voice sharp and loud. He didn't move. He simply looked at her with the calmness of someone who already knew how the story ended. "You're accusing me of damaging your car?" he asked softly. "You're lucky I'm not pressing charges," she said, hands on hips. "You installed that charger without proper HOA inspection, and it nearly set my property on fire. You endangered the whole neighborhood." The room buzzed with whispers, a few people gasping, a few shaking their heads. The man took a slow breath and stood up. "Are you done?" he asked. "Not even close," she barked. "You and your little toy car think you're above the rules. Well, not in my neighborhood." He nodded slightly. "Good. Then let's clear something up." He tapped his tablet, and the projector flickered to life. The room went silent as the video played. The timestamp showed 12:47 a.m. There she was, Karen, dragging her orange extension cord across the street like a thief. The audience watched in disbelief as she crouched, plugged her Lexus into his Tesla Charger, and smiled proudly. Then came the sparks, the smoke, and her panicked run back home. The silence that followed was absolute. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God, that's her." Karen's face drained of color. "That's not. That's edited. You can't. The camera's live-streamed to the cloud," he said calmly. "It's time-stamped, authenticated, and stored in 3 locations. Would you like me to show the rest, or do you want to keep pretending?" Her mouth opened, then closed. The HOA president cleared his throat awkwardly. "Karen, is this true?" She glared at him, her voice trembling with rage. "He shouldn't have that charger. It violates community rules." "Actually," the man said, "it doesn't. I submitted my request, and the board approved it 2 months ago. You tried to block it, but the city permit overruled your objection." Laughter rippled through the room, quiet at first, then louder as people realized the truth. Karen's face flushed red. "You people don't understand," she snapped. "That charger uses community electricity. He's stealing power from the grid we pay for." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's solar-powered, Karen. You tried to steal sunlight." The room exploded in laughter. Even the HOA president tried to stifle a smile. Karen's eyes blazed with humiliation. "This isn't over," she spat. "You'll regret embarrassing me." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, the sound of her heels echoing through the hall. The laughter followed her all the way out the door. The man turned off the projector and sat down quietly. The HOA president cleared his throat. "Well, I think that settles that matter. Moving on." But everyone knew that nothing else in the meeting would be remembered. That night, as the man drove home, his wife smiled. "You handled that perfectly." He shrugged. "Sometimes the truth speaks louder than anger." "She won't take this well," his wife warned. "She never does." He smiled faintly. "Then I guess we'll see what she does next." Across the street, Karen's house was dark except for one light glowing upstairs. She sat at her computer, furiously typing emails to city officials, claiming harassment, claiming the video was AI-generated fake media, demanding that the charger be removed. But no one replied. The video had already gone viral within the neighborhood. People were laughing about it in the HOA chat, sending memes of solar panels wearing sunglasses, captions like "the sun lawyered up." The humiliation burned inside her like a furnace. She promised herself she'd get even, no matter how long it took. The man, meanwhile, had other plans. He spent the next day upgrading his charger, not out of fear, but preparation. He added a surge protector, reinforced the cable, and installed a hidden security feature that could detect unauthorized usage instantly. This time, if Karen, or anyone, tried to plug into it again, he'd know the exact second it happened. He even added a warning in small print near the socket: "Unauthorized use may cause system lockdown." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. That evening, as the sun set and the world turned orange, he stood in his driveway again, polishing his Tesla. The neighborhood was calm, children playing down the street, sprinklers hissing softly. Across the road, Karen's blinds twitched. He could feel her eyes on him. She hated that he wasn't afraid. He looked up, meeting her stare for a brief second before giving a small, calm smile. She slammed her blinds shut. He chuckled under his breath. "Still watching," he murmured. Later that night, his phone buzzed, a notification from his security app. Someone had accessed the live feed. He opened it instantly. There she was again. Karen, creeping across the street, a flashlight in one hand, a new extension cord in the other. "Unbelievable," he muttered. She knelt beside his charger, carefully examining it. She unplugged a small cover panel, searching for a port to connect her Lexus. She found one, grinning triumphantly, and plugged it in. The charger's light flashed red, warning. The system detected an overload and sent an automatic alert. On the screen, sparks began to flicker again. Karen jumped back, startled, but didn't stop. She pressed buttons, hit the side of the charger, muttering curses. Then, without warning, the Lexus horn blared, its alarm triggered by the surge. The car's lights flickered wildly before shutting down completely. Karen stood there frozen, the smell of burning plastic filling the air. The man watched silently, shaking his head. "Some people never learn," he said softly. The footage saved automatically. He didn't rush outside this time. He didn't need to. The HOA group chat was still open on his phone. Without a word, he sent the new clip. Within minutes, phones started buzzing all across the neighborhood. Karen ran back into her house just as her phone began ringing nonstop. The man smiled, leaning back in his chair. He didn't need revenge. He just needed to let her be herself long enough for karma to do its job. As he watched the video replay one last time, the final spark from the charger illuminated her shocked face perfectly before the feed cut to black. The next morning, the entire street was talking. Her Lexus sat in the driveway with a melted plug still dangling from the side, her once pristine car now a monument to her own greed. The man looked at it as he got into his Tesla, whispered, "That's what happens when you steal power from the wrong source," and drove away as the sun rose, golden and quiet once more over a neighborhood that finally understood who the real light belonged to. By the next week, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with whispers, laughter, and barely hidden smirks every time Karen stepped outside her house, her once pristine reputation now in ashes just like the plug she had melted. Her Lexus sat silent in her driveway, a burned mark across the charging port still visible even after she tried to scrub it clean. The HOA chat groups had turned her name into a joke, memes circulating with captions like Karen versus the sun, round 2. Every time she opened her front door, she felt eyes on her, the quiet judgment of the same people who used to fear her rules and fines. But humiliation didn't humble her, it only made her meaner. She wasn't used to being laughed at. She wasn't used to losing. And the more she stewed in her bitterness, the more obsessed she became with revenge. From her window, she watched the man's Tesla every morning, gleaming in the sunlight, its charger humming perfectly as if nothing had ever happened. He had repaired it quickly, even upgraded it, adding sleek new wiring and a silver cover plate that caught the light like a mirror. She hated it. To her, that charger wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of defiance, a reminder that she had lost control of her neighborhood. One night, she stood by her kitchen counter, sipping wine and scrolling through her phone. The HOA fines she once issued, the meetings she once dominated, none of it mattered anymore. People avoided her, the president ignored her calls, and her power was gone. Then, a notification popped up on her screen, an article about Tesla charger theft prevention systems. She clicked it out of spite but found herself reading every word. The comments section was full of people bragging about how they had bypassed similar systems or shared energy between cars. Her lips twisted into a cruel smirk. "So it can be done," she whispered. The next morning, she drove her half-broken Lexus to a nearby electronics store. The clerk raised an eyebrow when she asked for a power converter and a modified charging adapter. "Planning on some DIY work?" he asked casually. She smiled tightly. "Something like that." That night, long after the neighborhood lights went out, Karen returned home with her tools. She parked her car across the street again, this time further down, hidden in the shadows. She waited until she saw the man's bedroom light turn off, then slipped out into the dark, her gloves tight, her face set in determination. "You're not smarter than me," she muttered. "You don't get to make me look like a fool." She crouched beside the charger again, this time with the new adapter in hand. The cool metal of the Tesla charger glinted faintly in the moonlight. She connected the converter between the charger and her Lexus cable, careful not to repeat her last mistake. The system hummed softly, the red light blinking slowly to green. She smiled. "Got you now," she whispered. But what she didn't know was that the charger had been upgraded for one specific reason: to catch her in the act. Inside his home, the man was awake, sitting in his office chair with his laptop open. He had been expecting her. Ever since the first night. He had studied her habits, the times she left her lights on, when she peeked through the blinds, and how her obsession had grown. The new charger wasn't just better, it was smarter. The moment she connected her Lexus, his phone buzzed. Unauthorized access detected. He clicked the live feed. There she was again, crouched beside the charger like a raccoon in pearls, her face half-lit by the glow of the device. He didn't rush outside this time. He wanted her to finish what she started. The charger system had built-in power monitoring now. It automatically adjusted voltage when tampered with. As she began pulling power, the charger detected the overload. A small warning light flashed on its screen. Foreign adapter detected. System safety mode activating. Karen frowned, leaning closer. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The hum grew louder, a high-pitched buzz that made her flinch. Then, with a flash of light, a spark burst from the adapter, followed by a loud pop. The Lexus alarm blared again, louder than before, echoing down the entire street. Karen screamed, yanking the cable free, but it was too late. Smoke poured from the charger port, the smell of burnt metal filling the air. Lights flicked on across the neighborhood. Curtains opened. People peered out their windows to see her standing in the middle of the street in her robe, her Lexus smoking like a dying dragon. The man watched the chaos unfold on his screen, shaking his head. "She never learns," he muttered. His wife came into the room, eyes wide. "She did it again, didn't she?" He nodded. "Oh yeah. This time, She even brought her own adapter. His wife sighed. Should we call the fire department? Already did, he said, pointing at his phone. They're on their way. By the time the sirens reached the neighborhood, Karen's driveway was lit up with flashing red and blue lights. Firefighters doused the smoke, while police officers questioned her. Her voice trembled as she tried to explain. It's his fault. His charger is faulty. He's trying to electrocute me. The officer glanced at the Tesla charger across the street, perfectly intact, its indicator light glowing calm and green. He said slowly. Why were you using his charger again? Because it's unfair, she snapped. He's stealing neighborhood energy. The officer frowned. He's using solar panels. That's private property. Then how did my car catch fire? She screamed. Because you plugged into something that wasn't yours, the officer said, his voice dry. The neighbors gathered in small groups on their lawns, whispering and filming quietly with their phones. By the time the firefighters finished, Karen's Lexus was ruined, charred, melted, and smoking. The man finally stepped outside, calm and collected, as if nothing unusual was happening. Everything okay here, officer? He asked politely. The officer nodded. We'll handle it, sir. Thank you for reporting the first incident. Seems like you were right to install that system. Karen spun toward him, her voice breaking. You set me up. You wanted this to happen. He looked at her, his tone even. No, Karen. You did this to yourself. Twice. She lunged toward him, but the officer stopped her, holding her back. That's enough, he said firmly. You need to calm down. Her eyes were wild with rage. You think this is funny? You think you've won? I'll sue you. I'll take everything you own. The man shook his head slowly. You already tried to take my power, he said. Looks like you lost your own instead. The crowd murmured, someone laughed, and Karen's face turned crimson. She screamed something incoherent before storming back into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The next morning, her burnt Lexus was towed away, and for the first time, her driveway was empty. The man's phone buzzed constantly with messages from neighbors thanking him for handling things calmly, praising his patience. Some even joked about electing him HOA president. But he wasn't interested in power or titles. He was interested in peace. Still, deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. People like Karen didn't disappear. They festered. And as he stood on his porch, watching her curtains twitch again, he whispered to himself, You're not done, are you? He turned back toward his house, already thinking of his next move, because if she came for him again, he'd be ready. This wasn't just about stolen electricity anymore. It was about control, about standing up to the kind of person who thought they owned everyone else's life. The game had changed now, and he wasn't going to lose another spark to her madness. The neighborhood had grown quiet again, but it wasn't the calm of peace, it was the quiet of tension, the kind that settles before another storm, and everyone could feel it coming. Karen hadn't spoken to anyone since the night her Lexus caught fire, but that didn't mean she had given up. Behind her closed blinds, she was scheming again, her anger simmering hotter than ever. Her pride had been burned, her car was gone, and her once loyal neighbors now treated her like a ghost. Every whisper she heard from across the fences felt like laughter aimed at her. Every passing car felt like mockery. Meanwhile, the man across the street had gone back to his usual calm life. His Tesla sat clean and polished, his charger replaced and working perfectly, and the whole street seemed to relax under his quiet confidence. But deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time before Karen tried again. He didn't hate her, he just understood her type. The kind that can't stand losing control, the kind that would rather destroy themselves than admit defeat. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, his wife came out with 2 cups of coffee. Do you think she's done? She asked softly. He smiled faintly. People like her don't stop because they're wrong. They stop when they hit a wall too high to climb. His phone buzzed just then, a notification from a neighborhood app. Someone had posted a complaint titled Unsafe Solar Charging Station Violates HOA Property Rights. He didn't even need to open it. She's at it again, he said with a sigh. But this time, Karen wasn't just filing complaints. She was trying to rally the HOA against him. She spent the next few days sending emails, spreading rumors that his solar panels were illegal installations, that his Tesla charger was radiating dangerous levels of EMF, and even claiming that it had caused her medical issues. Most people ignored her, but a few curious neighbors started asking questions. One evening, while he was fixing the lawn sprinklers, two neighbors approached him hesitantly. "Hey, we don't believe what she's saying," one of them said. "But, can you just show us that you're set up safe? You know, to calm everyone down." The man smiled patiently and nodded. "Of course," he said. He gave them a small tour, showed the solar panel certification, the grounding system, and the Tesla charger's inspection approval. It was all legal, clean, and efficient. By the time they left, they were reassured and impressed. "She's losing it," one of them muttered as they walked away. But inside her house, Karen was watching from behind her curtain, her nails digging into the fabric. "You think you can make me look crazy," she hissed. That night, she decided to end this once and for all. Around midnight, she stepped outside again, this time not with an extension cord, but with something worse, a hammer and a bucket of paint. Her plan was simple: damage his charger, pour paint over his Tesla, and make it look like vandalism from kids. She crept across the street, her footsteps silent, her heart pounding. The charger's green light glowed softly, mocking her, daring her. She lifted the hammer, ready to swing. But just as she brought it down, a blinding white light exploded around her. The man's motion sensors had triggered every floodlight on his property. The yard lit up like daylight, cameras clicking, alarms beeping softly. Karen froze, deer in headlights, caught mid-swing. And then his voice echoed through the speakers, calm, steady, and cold. "Karen, put the hammer down." She spun around, her face pale. He stood at the doorway, holding a phone in one hand, recording her. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You've already done enough." She stammered, You set me up." "No," he said quietly. "You set yourself up. Again." Her breathing quickened, her grip tightening on the hammer. "I just wanted things to be fair," she shouted. "You think you can come here, show off your fancy car, your stupid charger, and make everyone look small?" He stepped closer, his tone firm. "This isn't about fairness. It's about respect. Something you stopped giving a long time ago." She raised the hammer again, trembling with rage, but before she could move, flashing blue lights filled the street. The security system had already called the police. The sound of sirens grew louder, and within minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up, their lights reflecting off the polished Tesla like shards of red and blue glass. Drop the weapon," one of the officers shouted. Karen froze again, then slowly lowered the hammer, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like," she said weakly. The man stood back, silent, as the officers handcuffed her gently but firmly. "We got reports of vandalism," one officer said. "And based on the footage, it looks exactly like what it looks like." They placed her in the back of the patrol car, and she stared out the window, her face twisted in disbelief. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "I'm on the HOA board." The officer gave a small sigh. "Not anymore, you're not." As they drove away, the man turned off the floodlights. The neighborhood had woken up again, people standing in doorways, watching in silence. No one said a word. Everyone knew what had just happened. The next morning, news spread quickly. The HOA called an emergency meeting, not to defend her, but to remove her. They voted unanimously to suspend her membership and bar her from holding any position again. For the first time in years, the community felt free. The man didn't attend the meeting. He didn't have to. He spent the morning in his driveway, sipping coffee, checking the now famous charger that had survived everything thrown at it. His wife came out and stood beside him. "You think that's the end of it?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "With people like her, it's never over. But maybe now she'll think twice before picking another fight she can't win." She nodded, looking out at the quiet street. You handled it well. I don't know how you stayed so calm. He chuckled softly. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with proof. That afternoon, a tow truck came to haul away what was left of Karen's burned Lexus. She watched from her porch, face pale, eyes hollow. No one waved. No one pitied her. The man caught her gaze once, just once, and for a fleeting second, she looked almost human again. Tired, defeated, lost. But as the truck disappeared down the road, she turned and went back inside, closing her door slowly, quietly. The street felt lighter after that. No more constant complaints, no more arguments about lawn height or mailbox color. People smiled again, kids rode their bikes without being scolded, and the man's Tesla Charger hummed peacefully, glowing green under the sunset. Yet that night, as he stood by the window, he noticed Karen's house still had one light on upstairs. He exhaled slowly. She's thinking, he murmured. His wife glanced up from her book. About what? He looked back at the soft glow through her curtains. About revenge, or regret. I guess we'll find out soon enough. And as the Charger's light flickered once in the dark, the story of peace and power in that small suburban street was far from finished. Days turned into weeks, and though the neighborhood appeared peaceful again, the air still carried something heavy, something unspoken. The HOA no longer feared Karen, but her presence lingered like a storm cloud that refused to drift away. Her house, once a symbol of authority, was now a monument of embarrassment. The burnt marks from her Lexus still stained her driveway, and the empty space where her car once stood was a daily reminder of how far she had fallen. She had stopped showing up at meetings, and most people assumed she had finally given up. But the man across the street knew better. He saw the small changes, how her blinds moved just slightly every time he stepped outside, how the porch light flickered at odd hours of the night, how she had installed a new security camera facing directly toward his home. She wasn't finished. Not yet. He didn't fear her, but he stayed prepared. His Charger now had an upgraded lock system, infrared sensors, and a backup camera pointed straight at the street. He'd learned by now, peace didn't come from hoping trouble would end. It came from being ready when it came back. One night, a soft rain fell over the neighborhood, the kind that made everything shine under the streetlights. The man stood by his window, sipping coffee, when he saw a shadow move near Karen's garage. He squinted, setting his cup down. The shape moved again, small, deliberate movements. He opened his front door quietly and stepped outside, the wet air cool against his face. A faint metallic clang echoed, and then a soft hiss of wires being pulled. He followed the sound to the edge of his property and stopped. Karen was kneeling near his solar battery box, her hair damp from the rain, her hands covered in dirt. "Karen," he said softly, his voice steady but firm. She froze, her shoulders tense. Slowly, she turned her head, her eyes wild, red-rimmed from exhaustion. "I just wanted to check something," she said weakly, her voice trembling. "You've done enough checking," he replied. "Go home." She stood up, swaying slightly, her hands shaking. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said bitterly. "You think everyone loves you now because you made me look like a fool. But you're the problem here, not me. You're the one changing this place. This was a normal neighborhood before you showed up with your toys and your smug little smile." He didn't respond. The rain dripped from the edge of his roof, each drop echoing in the silence between them. "I was respected," she continued, stepping closer. "People listened to me. I kept this place perfect. And then you," she pointed at him, her voice breaking. "You ruined everything." He stared at her calmly. "I didn't ruin anything. You did that yourself." Her jaw clenched. "You think you're better than me? Because you have a Tesla? Because you have money? You don't belong here." He sighed quietly. "Karen, go home. You're not thinking straight." But she wasn't listening. In her hand, he noticed the faint glint of a screwdriver. Before he could react, she swung it toward the Charger, aiming for the panel. He caught her wrist mid-swing, not forcefully, but enough to stop her cold. "Enough," he said, his voice low but sharp. She glared up at him, her breathing heavy, rainwater streaming down her face like tears. "You can't stop me," she hissed. "You can't control everything." "I don't want to control anything," he said. "I just want peace. Something you could have had too." She yanked her hand free and stepped back, trembling. "You'll regret this," she said. "I'll make sure everyone sees who you really are." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then show them, Karen. Show them what you've become." She blinked, confused, as he slowly lifted his phone. The screen glowed faintly, showing the live feed from the security camera. Her, standing in the rain, screwdriver in hand, mid-swing. Her face went pale. "You," she whispered. "You were filming." "The system records automatically," he said. "Always has." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The realization hit her like thunder. She turned and ran toward her house, nearly slipping on the wet grass, fumbling with her keys as she disappeared inside. He watched her porch light flick on, then off again. The rain grew heavier, washing away the muddy footprints she'd left behind. The next morning, the video was already circulating among the HOA members. Someone leaked it. Maybe the man, maybe not. But it didn't matter. The footage spoke for itself. The once mighty Karen, sneaking through the rain, caught once again trying to destroy something she couldn't control. The HOA officially voted to terminate her membership permanently. Her access to neighborhood privileges, community pools, and events, gone. She was an outcast now, ignored and avoided by everyone. 4 days, she stayed inside, curtains drawn, the world outside pretending she didn't exist. But the man couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. One night, he noticed her lights flicker again, and then all go out at once. The next morning, her house looked abandoned. No movement, no mail taken, no noise. Some neighbors whispered she had left town out of shame. Others thought she was hiding. But then, 2 weeks later, he received a letter, no return address, no name, just a small envelope left in his mailbox. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper with shaky handwriting. "You took everything from me. You humiliated me. But you can't stay lucky forever. Everyone falls eventually." He folded the paper quietly, staring at it for a long moment. His wife noticed his expression when he walked back inside. "What's wrong?" she asked. He handed her the letter. She read it, her face tightening. "She's threatening you again." He nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just words." She frowned. "Should we call the police?" "No," he said softly. "People like her, they destroy themselves faster than anyone else could." That night, he checked his security system again, making sure every camera, every alarm, every motion sensor was working. The street was silent, the air still. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to relax. But deep down, he knew Karen wasn't gone. Not really. Her pride was too big, her anger too deep. Somewhere out there, she was waiting for another chance to make him fall. And as he stood by the charger, the green light glowing steadily, he whispered, "Let her try." The hum of electricity filled the air, calm and steady, like the heartbeat of a man who had nothing to fear. Because the truth was simple, no matter how dark Karen's plans became, she would always be fighting against something brighter, stronger, and untouchable. You can't steal power from someone who knows how to create his own. The next few weeks passed in strange quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace but rather makes you listen harder, waiting for something to happen. The neighborhood seemed normal again, kids playing outside, sprinklers hissing across lawns, and mail trucks humming down the street. But the man could still feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. Karen's house sat in eerie silence across the road, blinds closed day and night, her porch light flickering weakly as if even the bulbs were tired of her presence. Rumors spread. Some said she had moved away, others claimed she was planning a lawsuit, but deep down, he knew better. Karen wasn't the type to leave quietly. She was planning something. He could feel it in his bones. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with orange and red streaks, the man was in his garage working on a small project. He was adding a new layer of protection to his Tesla charger, a hidden breaker that would trip the moment anyone tried tampering with it. His wife appeared at the doorway with a concerned look. "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" she asked softly. He gave a small nod without looking up. "I'm not paranoid," he said. "I'm just prepared. People like Karen don't fade away, they fester." She walked closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. "She can't hurt you anymore. Everyone saw who she really is." He sighed and turned off his tools. Sometimes, people who lose power become desperate to take it back. That's when they're the most dangerous. Later that night, as rain started to fall softly against the windows, the man sat in his living room reading while his wife prepared for bed. Everything was peaceful, the kind of peace that almost made him believe the chaos had truly ended. But then his phone buzzed. A motion alert. He frowned, unlocking it quickly. The camera feed from his driveway showed movement near his Tesla charger. Someone crouched down, wearing a dark hooded jacket, holding what looked like a pair of wire cutters. He zoomed in and his heart sank. It was her. Karen. Her movements were shaky, unsteady, but determined. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath. He stood, grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. His wife's voice followed him down the hall. "Is it her again?" "Stay inside," he called back. The rain grew heavier as he stepped outside, the air cold and wet. He crossed the driveway quietly until he was just a few feet away from her. "Karen," he said evenly. She froze, the wire cutters still in her hand. Slowly, she turned her head. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, her hair soaked against her cheeks. She looked less like the proud HOA queen she once was and more like a ghost clinging to the last pieces of her pride. "I just wanted to see if it still works," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not yours to touch," he replied calmly. "You've already damaged it twice. You've been caught on camera every time. What's left for you to prove?" She laughed weakly, a hollow sound that echoed under the rain. "You think you're better than me. Everyone does now. They treat me like a criminal, like I'm crazy." Her voice cracked, turning from anger to desperation. "But you don't understand. I built this neighborhood. I made it perfect. And you took that away from me." "No," he said quietly. "You took it away from yourself." "I was trying to protect it," she shouted, stepping closer, her eyes wide. "From people like you who come in thinking they can change everything. The cars, the chargers, the panels, the rules. You think you're smarter than everyone else." He shook his head. "I just wanted to live in peace, Karen. You turned it into a war." For a moment, they stood there in the rain, the sound of water hitting the pavement filling the silence. Then she lifted the wire cutters slightly, her hands trembling. "You ruined me," she said softly. "I lost everything because of you." "No," he said. "You lost everything because you couldn't stand seeing someone else happy." Her face twisted with rage. "You don't get to say that," she screamed, swinging the cutters toward the charger cable. But before she could strike, there was a bright flash, one so quick and sharp it blinded her. The hidden breaker tripped instantly, cutting off the current and sending a jolt of static through the air. The sound was deafening, followed by a burst of smoke and the sharp smell of ozone. Karen stumbled backward, dropping the cutters, clutching her hand. She screamed as pain shot through her arm. "I told you not to touch it," the man said firmly, stepping forward. "You could have killed yourself." She looked at him, her eyes wide with shock and hatred. "You set this up," she hissed. "You wanted this to happen." "No, Karen," he said. "You did this to yourself. Again." She fell to her knees, sobbing in the rain, her voice breaking apart. "You took my life," she cried. "You took everything." He sighed, tired and calm. "I didn't take anything from you. You gave it away, piece by piece, every time you tried to hurt someone else." The flashing lights of emergency vehicles appeared at the end of the street. Another neighbor must have called after hearing the noise. The police and paramedics arrived quickly, surrounding the scene. Karen was hysterical, crying, accusing him of electrocution traps and revenge devices. But the officer in charge shook his head after checking the footage. He said flatly, you broke into his property, again, during a restraining order, and tried to damage private electrical equipment. You're lucky it was a safety shutdown and not a live line. Karen screamed, he planned this. He made me look like a fool. The officer looked at her calmly. You did that yourself. They took her away in handcuffs, her cries fading into the rain. The man stood there silently, the water dripping from his hair, the soft hum of the Tesla charger coming back online. His wife came out, wrapping a coat around him. It's finally over, she said quietly. He shook his head slowly. No, it's just sad. She looked at him, confused. Why? He glanced down the street, where the patrol cars' red and blue lights disappeared into the night. Because some people can't live without control, he said softly. And when they lose it, they destroy themselves trying to get it back. The next morning, the news spread through the entire neighborhood. Karen had been taken into custody for property destruction, trespassing, and violating court orders. Her house was put up for sale within the week. The HOA, eager to distance themselves from her, erased every trace of her from their records. Her name, once spoken with authority, became a joke whispered behind smiles. For the first time in years, the community felt truly free. The man stood on his porch, watching the sunrise, his Tesla glowing under the soft light. The charger hummed quietly beside him, the symbol of everything he had endured. His wife joined him with 2 cups of coffee. You're quiet this morning, she said. Thinking. He smiled faintly. Just wondering how long peace will last this time. She laughed softly. You could always move. And miss all this? He joked, taking a sip. They stood there together as the neighborhood slowly came to life, unaware that across the city, Karen sat alone in a holding cell, staring at the wall, whispering to herself about getting even. But for now, in that small suburban street, the battle was over. The sun rose higher, the air felt cleaner, and the sound of power flowing through the charger was steady and calm. A quiet victory for a man who had fought not for revenge, but for the simple right to live in peace. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood began to breathe again, free from the chaos that had ruled it for so long. The sun rose gently over rows of tidy homes, the lawns green and freshly mowed, children laughing in the streets again, and neighbors who had once avoided each other now stopping to chat over fences. For the first time in years, there were no angry emails, no fines for minor things, no tense HOA meetings filled with shouting and control. The air felt lighter. The man stood on his porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching his Tesla charge quietly. The soft hum of electricity filled the silence like a heartbeat, steady and strong. His wife joined him, leaning against the porch rail. Feels strange, doesn't it? She said. Quiet. He smiled faintly. Almost too quiet, he replied. She laughed softly, nudging his arm. Don't jinx it. But even as they spoke, a small envelope sat unnoticed in the mailbox at the end of his driveway. Neat handwriting, no return address. When he later picked it up, he knew before opening it who it was from. The handwriting was shaky, but familiar. Inside, a single sheet of paper. I hope you're happy. You won. I lost everything. They took my house, my car, my reputation. But remember, some storms don't die. They just wait for their season. There was no signature, but he didn't need one. He folded the letter quietly, put it in a drawer, and never mentioned it to anyone. Karen's house sold quickly, but her shadow lingered. The new family who moved in, a young couple with 2 kids, had no idea of the chaos that once lived inside those walls. They painted the house bright blue, planted flowers along the porch, and waved every morning. Life had moved on, but deep down, the man couldn't shake the feeling that some lessons were never truly over. One evening, months later, he got a call from a city official, a quiet man who handled HOA and zoning issues. I just thought you'd want to know, the man said. Karen moved out of state. Arizona, I think. Tried to start her own neighborhood improvement committee. Didn't last long. Same story, different place. The man chuckled softly. She'll never change. Seems that way, the official said. Anyway, thought you'd like the closure. After hanging up, he sat on the porch for a long time, the sky turning red with sunset, thinking about how people like her never truly disappeared. They just found new places to haunt. But here, in this neighborhood, she was gone for good. As the months rolled by, the story of the HOA Charger feud became neighborhood legend. People told it to newcomers with laughter and disbelief. Some even joked about putting up a small plaque near his driveway. The Great Power War, justice served. He didn't mind the jokes. If anything, it reminded everyone that power, when misused, always burned the hand that tried to steal it. His Tesla became a quiet symbol of that victory. Never flaunted, never shown off, just existing peacefully like it belonged. But there was more to it than revenge. The real victory was peace. No one filed false complaints anymore. No one abused the HOA. The neighborhood meetings turned friendly again, full of laughter instead of shouting. And whenever anyone brought up his name, it was always with respect. One morning, the HOA president stopped by. "We've been talking," he said with a grin, "and the board wants to offer you a seat. We could use someone who actually believes in fairness for a change." The man chuckled, shaking his head. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I think I've had enough HOA politics for one lifetime." The president laughed. "Fair enough. Still, thank you for standing your ground. You saved this place from turning into chaos." The man nodded politely, watching as the president walked back to his car. When he turned back toward his Tesla, he smiled faintly. "Saved it? Maybe. Or maybe we just reminded it what peace looks like." That night, as the stars filled the sky, he sat outside once more, the faint glow of the Charger lighting up the driveway like a beacon. He thought about everything, the long months of harassment, the endless meetings, the nights of anger, the fights he didn't want but couldn't avoid. It had been exhausting, but in a strange way, it had taught him something important. Power wasn't about control, or rules, or revenge. It was about patience. About staying calm when the world tries to push you into chaos. About knowing when to act and when to let the truth do the talking. And sometimes, the best way to win wasn't by fighting. It was by standing so still that your enemy destroyed themselves trying to shake you. As he sat there lost in thought, a soft hum filled the air, the sound of his Tesla fully charged. He unplugged it, running his hand over the smooth metal, and smiled. "Looks like we're back to normal," he whispered. His wife appeared in the doorway, smiling. "Or maybe better than normal," she said. "Maybe this time, it'll stay that way." He looked at her and nodded. Maybe it will. But as he turned toward the street, he noticed something small and strange, a shadow moving near the corner of the block. A figure standing under the streetlight for a few seconds before disappearing into the night. He frowned slightly, but didn't move. Maybe it was just someone walking their dog. Maybe not. Either way, he wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever storm waited out there, he was ready. He had learned that no matter how dark it got, light always returned, and some power couldn't be stolen, no matter how hard anyone tried. The camera light blinked once, the Charger's glow reflected on the car's hood, and the man smiled as he whispered the same words that had carried him through it all. "You can't steal what you don't understand." The night fell quiet again, the neighborhood resting in peace, and for the first time in a long time, he truly believed that some stories, even the ones that begin with sparks, can end in light.